the sidewalk, one time, down in asphalt. Reality is passing, the time is never ending.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Beyond the Breakdown with Six Scars. I am JT, and I am joined tonight by Mindy Jackson of the amazing metal band out of North Carolina, Dying Oath. Mindy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain. Like, we're on this high from our first show, so.
Was it the first show of the year?
Yeah, it was our first show of the year, first show with our new bassist.
Oh, how'd it go?
It went really well. Like, he's sitting over here chilling right now, but it went really well. We had, 2 practices, I think, before we got to play together on a big stage. But, yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Hell yeah.
What's up?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Doing good. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm all blurry. You know. Joey McDaniel, play bass.
Nice to meet you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you. That first show was amazing.
So, for those of us that may not, or those of the viewers that may not know who Dying Oath is, tell them a little bit about who you guys are.
Well, we used to be a 6-piece. We are now a 5-piece. We've kind of, it's hard to say. It's just been an evolution, I think, so to speak. But some of us are from North Carolina. Some of us are from Virginia. Our headquarters right now is in Withville, Virginia.
Okay.
But yeah, we play metalcore music. We do everything from like 2000s metalcore to modern metalcore, kind of fusion.
The first time I heard you all, I got a major early Killswitch vibe with the riffs. Vocals are definitely not what I was expecting in the best of ways. They really were. Like I was not expecting you to sound the way you do, and I've been obsessed ever since.
I appreciate that. I think that's probably the same sentiment with everybody. Because, you come over to the merch table, I'm like, hi, everybody. Let me give you a hug.
You're all timid and,
Yeah. And then I get on stage and it's like my demons come out.
I mean, I think that's the best place for them to come out, though, truly.
It's a good outlet for sure, yeah.
It really is.
Definitely a good outlet.
So I want to back it up. So tell me a little bit about the early beginnings for you with music, how you connected with it.
Well, I came from a musical family, so most of the people in my family did some sort of music. A lot of them did country or bluegrass or Christian music or whatever. My mom was a singer, and that was kind of the dream that she wanted to follow, but then she ended up getting pregnant with me and gave up that life to take care of me. So I decided at an early age that was something that I wanted to kind of pick up the torch and run with it. So I've been singing since I was in church at about 4 or 5 years old. And I've been in bands since I was 14, and I just turned 37. So you do the math.
I would have not guessed that you were actually 37. I never thought that.
It's because I dye my hair. I swear. If you saw this gray,
so it's
a different tune.
It's interesting because you and me kind of had a similar finding of music. I grew up in a pretty highly religious home and grew up in church. So I was always part of the choir that we had there. And just, through evolution and, osmosis of change, basically, it turned into me becoming a vocalist. So it's really cool to hear a similar upbringing.
Absolutely. I feel like when country and Christian music is shoved down your throat, you go to the nearest opposite that you can find.
Yes. I think the very first non-Christian song I ever listened to was Metallica's Seek and Destroy.
That's pretty awesome. So my parents used to tell me all the time when I was a kid that while I was actually inside my mom's stomach that they would put headphones on me, and it was always Metallica and AC/DC. So my mom always joked that like when I came out, I was like this. Yeah.
So a little bit opposite for me. My mom would put Petra on her walkie-talkie or on her cassette tapes, and put them on her stomach when she was pregnant with me. And Petra was like a Christian rock / power metal band. She put them on, and Striper and different things. So I grew up basically saying I love you instead of the horns.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Daughter is screaming in the background, but
Oh no, not a problem at all. So what were some of your earlier inspirations?
Oh, a lot of different things. The first album that I ever owned in my life was Pat Benatar's Best Shots, and so that's where I started learning like higher range vocals. That's kind of where I started out, and then I saw Joan Jett on the TV when I was like 5 and raved until I got a leather jacket, and I just wanted to be like her. I thought she was like the biggest badass on the planet, so I was like, yeah, I want to be Joan Jett when I grow up. So that kind of started my love for it. And then I saw some of these bands and stuff when I was in high school, and I thought, I could probably do this. And then I got the Kitty Spit album when I was 14, and I found it at a Sam Goody, and I didn't even know what it was. And I picked it up, and I put it in the CD player after I coaxed my mom into buying it by putting my thumb over the explicit lyrics thing. And I got it in the car and turned it on, and she was like, what is this? Like, why are we listening to this? And I was like, wow, this is groundbreaking. This is like the coolest thing that I've ever seen. I want to do this. I want to start a band. And I went back to school like the following week, and I was like, does anybody want to start a band? And there was these 2 guys in my math class. One of the guys turned around and he was like, did you say band? Like, we've been looking for a bass player. I was like, I'm a bass player. I hadn't even ever picked up a bass in my life. So that week I went out and had my mom buy me a bass, like this cheap like bass setup. And I learned every Marilyn Manson song that I could find and a handful of other things that I really enjoyed at the time, Kitty being one of them. And I got there and like showed off with some of these songs that I knew, and they were like, wow, you're like a really awesome bass player. I'd only been playing for like 2 weeks before I went to this audition. And nailed it. But I was really good with like hand-eye coordination, so I could watch like what their hands were doing, and I just kind of followed along with it until I learned to like have my own grooves and stuff. And I ended up being a bass player and a backup vocalist for like 10 years before I was ever an actual vocalist. So that's kind of how I got my first influences. I was actually in a pop punk band before I did metal.
Really?
Yeah, I was in a pop punk band as a bassist and a backup vocalist for like 10 years.
So now, did you guys do originals or covers?
No, we did all originals. I think we had one cover that we did by, it was Taking Back Sunday. We did a Taking Back Sunday cover, but the rest of them were all originals, and they were a little bit heavier than most pop punk at the time because we had all grown up on like Southern rock and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it was like this weird Southern rock pop punk mesh with Pantera kind of, I don't know. It was a thing, but people liked it. And then I kind of started leaning more toward the metal because that's always what I wanted to do. And this band had, they were holding auditions for a vocalist, and I was terrified because I couldn't scream at the time. All I could do was like clean vocals, and the only clean vocals I did were like high register operatic style vocals. So it was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I only sing opera. But I went into this audition, and there was a couple of people ahead of me, and they ended up giving me a shot. And about 2 months in, they wanted to do a Drowning Pool cover. So I started learning to scream, and the rest is history.
Wow. So you've been doing your scream since you were about 15, 16 years old?
No, I was about 21.
21.
Whenever I started that. I didn't even know anything about like learning to scream or like anything like that, but I had a lot of friends that were kind of into it. So I started watching videos and asking them for advice and stuff like that, and just learning to do it the right way. Because the first few times I did it was terrible. It was awful. It was really bad.
Yeah, I was the same way. I've been trying to perfect it since I was about 17, and I'm 33 now. But the thing that struck me with your vocals, especially your scream, was the amount of breath control that you have over it. That's not something you see very often. Not disparagingly amongst the independent community, but a lot of times people don't take the effort to really learn breath control. And it's something I noticed right away, and I wanted to give you your flowers on that because that's something that really stood out to me.
I appreciate that. One thing I feel like people don't continue to do is like once they feel like they've gotten down what they want to learn, they don't continue to learn. But I still do voice lessons and stuff these days. Like if I hear something that I want to try to learn, then I'll pay somebody that knows how to do it to teach me how to do it. I think that staying in your lane and doing the fundamentals before you really get out of your element is the core thing to being better. And I want to be the best that I can be, not necessarily the best vocalist in the world, but I want to be the best that I can be. And I feel like there's always improvement. So I still do vocal lessons to this day to try and improve on certain techniques that I don't exactly have down right. But I owe my breath control to Melissa Cross. I did some classes with Melissa, and one of her students actually was teaching me for a while, and then I was learning to do cleans from Janelle from Conquer to Divide. She's the bass player, the vocalist for them. I did a class with Will from Lorna Shore back before he blew up. He was doing lessons for fairly cheap. So I've had a lot of juggernauts in the scene actually teach me some of this stuff. So it's not stuff that I just learned to do on my own. If anybody is wanting to do it, please learn to do it the right way, because the breath control, the warm-up techniques, all of these things are things that you need to be good, or you're going to ruin your career right off the bat. So I'm not afraid to tell people that I take lessons, and I encourage people to do the same, because no matter how good you are, I mean, some of the best vocalists in the world right now still take lessons from Melissa Cross.
Mm-hmm.
There's always room for improvement. You should always want to be better. And so that's how I learned lessons.
I always tell everybody, I'm like, if you're trying to learn how to scream, first get the Zen of Screaming with Melissa Cross. And once you establish the fundamentals, you use that as your basics and just progress from there.
Absolutely. That's the Zen of Screaming actually was the video that taught me the beginning of breath control and knowing, how much you can put in and how much you can take out in order to get different sounds. And then taking classes with her is how I learned to do like the different vowel sounds with your mouth. And, it's a process. A lot of people think that you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm a great screamer. But genuinely, if you talk to any great vocalist, they're going to tell you it takes years to like hone your own sound and to really know what you're doing and to navigate through that without hurting yourself.
So while we're still talking about vocals, did it take you a while to learn what your sound was? Did you kind of go from mimicking to just developing your own?
Absolutely. I think everybody does that. I think that even subconsciously, sometimes like the people that you listen to and that made you want to listen to music that really inspired you still comes out. I mean, sometimes I'll do things on stage and I'm like, man, that sounded like Kitty, and it's not that I'm doing it intentionally. It's just something I've listened to so much that muscle memory kicks in and actual memory kicks in, and they blend together to create the sound sometimes, and you can't even help it. But I've been really trying to find my own sound still to this day, because I feel like every band or group that you're in, or I do a lot of collaborations, I try to put my own sound on everything that I do, my solo work, anything that I'm doing. But it took me many years to figure out what that was, because, I mean, in my head, I had so many different mixtures of inspirations that I was pulling from. And so my brain sometimes would just not know what direction I was supposed to go in. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of practice to know who you are as a musician. And then once you know who you are as a musician, that's when you can really start to know who you are in your sound and putting that forward. It's a process. It's taken me years. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I feel like the past 4 or 5 years is really when I really started to figure out who I was and what I wanted to sound like. I'm still figuring out now. The new evolution of Dying Oath actually is a different sound from what we were 4 years ago. So the evolution is constantly happening, and I think it's inevitable, to be honest.
I do too, and I also think that if you're not evolving, you're devolving. Basically, if you don't learn to change, you're gonna die out. I know for me, I'm still on that same journey where I'm still trying to identify what my voice is and trying to break it out amongst what I tend to sound like and try to find my own original. But speaking of dying oaf, so I know we can't say too much about any of the newer stuff that's obviously coming out, but kind of walk me through a little bit of the history of dying oaf if you can.
Josh, you wanna come chat about the beginner days?
So I think you got this, man.
So
These 5 years you've been there.
Full faith.
Yeah.
Full faith. Just send it.
Well, these two guys sitting in front of me, which are Ryan and Josh, were the most original members. They were actually in this band. This is Ryan. You'll have to come a little closer so they can see your face.
What's up, man?
So that's Ryan. That's Josh. So these guys actually are the founding members before me. They had this band, started the band, had the name, kind of had the foundation of what they wanted to do. And it was like, they started out just wanting to jam together. It was something that they did as friends, that they just enjoyed the same music. They wanted to write music together, and it was fun. And then I think at some point Josh had decided, that they wanted to be a little more serious with it and find serious members that weren't just hanging out on the weekend. So he kind of put out for just a couple of different members. They went through a couple of different members before they found, who they really wanted. When I came in, they had a clean vocalist at the time, which is how we ended up with two vocalists. He wasn't really into the whole screaming thing, so they wanted a screamer. So it was the two of them and a drummer and a clean vocalist. They held a couple of auditions, and I ended up being their pick, thank God, because I was literally just going to bug them until they changed their mind. But they picked me, and they picked me, and I actually was living with a guy at the time who was my bass player for another band. So I was like, hey, I knew this bass player. We should try him out. So he came in, liked the music, they liked him. We all got along. We're like, okay, let's move forward with this. So that's kind of how we started out. And since then, we've gone through a couple of drummers, a couple of bassists. We've gone through a couple of clean vocalists, but the three beginning members are still here. But the reason for that is because when you're evolving as a band, it's hard when people have different personalities, different lifestyles. People have kids, they have jobs. There's all these situations that sometimes will hold people back from being able to do what they need to do. And we're kind of a train. We just keep on rolling no matter what. And if people want to stay on the train, it's cool. And if they don't, we'll pick up another member along the way, so to speak. So that's kind of where we're at now. We lost our last clean vocalist, and we decided that at this point, I pretty much had played cleans and screams and done shows that way. So we're like, oh, well, I know both the parts. I can rewrite a lot of it for one vocalist. It's too hard to try and keep finding a clean vocalist, so I just took over. Our friend Kristen was going through some personal stuff with her job, stuff like that, and it just wasn't working out for her. And so she's going to remain as a backup vocalist or backup bassist if we need somebody to fill in. But we knew Joey. He was booking some local shows and had become my tattoo artist at the time. We became really close friends, and we were sitting around at my house one night talking, and he's like, I'd kind of like to play bass for you guys. And I was like, we kind of need a bassist, so let's see where this goes. And a couple weeks ago, he showed up and really was killing it. I mean, he pretty much learned the whole set in one go, and we spent our second practice just tightening everything up, and I rewrote a bunch of the songs and wrote the other songs out for one vocalist, and here we are. And our first show is going to be like the rest of the year, I feel like it's going to be killer. Like, we're going to have so much fun together. There's such a change in energy. Like, it's so tight and so beautiful. And I'm really, really excited for what's to come for us.
That is amazing. So I think the first time I saw you all heard of you all was through Blue Ridge Rock Fest. So
that's cool.
Yeah. What was that experience like? I've not gotten to ask anybody that.
So we submitted just for kind of, okay, let's see if we can get on. And, you know, we didn't really put too much stock into it. We're like, yeah, it'd be cool if we get on, but if we don't, you know, we'll just keep submitting until we do. Or, you know, we submitted for a couple other things and just kind of waited. And the day that we got the email back saying that we're in it, like, I can't even begin to tell you, like, the amount of excitement and energy that just washed over all of us. Like, for me, I was just like crying happy tears because I was like, dude, this is like the biggest thing that we're ever going to get to do. We're playing with bands that have been our idols our whole lives. Like, we get to play on the biggest stage we're ever going to play for. And we had no idea what to expect at all, you know, and they sent us emails here and there telling us what we needed to do, how we needed to show up, where we needed to show up, times, all this stuff. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. So, of course, we get there and we hang out the first night. The second day we were supposed to go on, and it was what, like midday? Yeah. It was like noon or 1. I think it was 1 on a Friday. Yeah. And so we were like, there's probably not going to be a lot of people there, but this is our first festival. Like, it's going to be cool regardless. We get to see a lot of our bands backstage and stuff like that. So it's going to be cool, you know. And we get there, and there's nobody standing out there for us as we're doing our sound check. And I'm like, all right, it's going to be like friends and family, and that's cool, you know. And we all do this thing where we come up on the stage as the music's coming on. So the drummer goes on first. He starts playing the drums, and everybody else comes up on the stage. And I'm always the last one on. So everybody goes up on the stage, and it sounds like there's a couple of people up there. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be cool. I mean, we're probably going to play for like 100 people or something. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And I roll up onto the stage, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that when I looked out, all you could see was people. I mean, like, you could not even see the hill that was over that. It was just people to the left, to the right, straight in front, just people. I literally thought about running off the stage at that point. I was so terrified. So just, it was crazy. It was crazy. And we ended up getting a really lucky slot because right before us, Stitched Up Heart was playing. And so the second that we started, all of their crowd kind of came over into our crowd and made a bigger crowd, and it just kept growing and growing. By like the third song, it was just so big, and there was a mosh pit out there like the size of Texas. Like, it was just huge, and the dust was just rolling up. It was like something on a dream or a music video. It was crazy. But we ended up playing for thousands of people, and it was just so surreal that it was a blur. Like, I can't tell you anything that I did when I was on the stage. I can't tell you what it felt like because it was just so intense that it was over in like 2 seconds. And after we finished playing, like, I handed the microphone over to the sound guy, and I was just like, wow, we did that. Like, we really just did that. It was just the most incredible experience of my whole life. I probably the rest of these guys too, but it was so awesome. And we ended up being one of the the fan favorites is what they called it. We ended up being one of the fan favorites for the year because our crowd was so big. So we pretty much were a shoe-in for the following year. And they offered us some money to show up the second year. And we were like, I mean, no doubt. Yeah. Obviously we're going to come back the second year after that. And the second year was also incredible. We didn't have as much of a crowd as we did the first year because they were having some issues with getting people to the shuttles and stuff like that. And we played at like noon, but we still had, I'd say a couple hundred, probably. I mean, it was still a large crowd for a side stage, but it was still an incredible experience. Like, we still got to go backstage and meet a lot of our idols and chat with them and see them side stage and stuff. It was really, really cool. I hate that that's probably not going to be an opportunity for us ever again, but I'm not afraid to say that was our home, and it was awesome. We appreciate those guys a lot.
Absolutely. So if it's okay with you, I'll take it into a little bit more of a serious tone as
Sure.
the podcast tends to do. Listening back through your discography, Ascension really stuck out to me. Can you walk me through a little bit of what that one is about and what that one means to you?
So all the songs that we write, or that I write, I should say, are very personal to me. So it's stuff that either I survived or it's stuff that people very close to me survived, and it's real stories. I tend to write stuff that I feel most bands don't want to talk about, things that get swept under the rug that most people don't even pay attention to because they're so afraid of being canceled or they're afraid of whatever the case may be. But I feel like the more personal you are, the more it's going to translate to people because it's real and people are going to really be able to understand what you're saying because they go through the same issues. And Ascension for me was about being in some abusive situations in my life and really just wanting to be able to help whoever is in those situations and being like, hey, like this happened to me and I got out of it. You can do the same. Like you need to speak up for yourself and do something about it. Cause a lot of our music is really about overcoming things. I think that it's important for people to help each other and to identify mental health issues and things like that and really try to help each other because the music that we grew up on helped us through our mental issues and things that we were going through in life that we felt like were holding us down. And metal in general is about breaking away from the norm and really thinking outside the box and helping other people. And so that's kind of what I want to do is just write things that people identify with and things that might save somebody's life one day. Even if it's just one person, then I feel like I've done my job. And that was just a song to help anybody that might be in a terrible situation to overcome that and feel better.
Absolutely. Sorry, we had a little bit of tech difficulty there for whatever reason. No, I completely agree with you. That's honestly one of the big reasons why I started this podcast was a lot of people discuss music, but they're not necessarily afraid, but there's still a stigma, right, around discussing any kind of mental illness because obviously if you suffer a mental illness, you're deemed insane by the unknowing, essentially. And you're helping break that stigma. So for that, I applaud you because there wasn't a whole lot really up until like the last decade or so, in my opinion, that really focused on people's mental health trials.
For sure. But I think a lot of people that are in this industry, especially people in metal, like the reason why they do music is because they have those issues. Yes. It's a way to release those things or to write about it and to get through it, to overcome it. And I don't see why there's such a stigma when we can help others get through that as well. It's not just about helping ourselves. It's about helping the listener to get through those same things. Our listeners are the whole reason why we're doing this to begin with. Like we write music that we love, obviously, but we also write music that we know that is going to help somebody out there, that somebody, even if it's just a song that makes you want to dance and makes you happy. Like I'm cool with that too. It's just each song is something different for the listener. And I just wanted to be able to say, hey, this happens to everybody. Like I don't understand why people don't talk about it more. I think the world would be a better place if they did. We'd have a lot more friends to talk about things with, but it's just not like that these days.
I know, and I wish with everything in me that it was way different, where people did feel more welcome to speak out about the things they're going through. And it's like, I'll tell everybody, I'd rather sit here and talk to you now than not have you when you're gone,
Absolutely. I agree. And that's kind of why we started like the Dying Oath family and why we try to reach out to people through every message that we get, things like that, because you never know what one hello or, just a small chat with somebody could change their entire life or their entire life progression in the direction that they're going in. It's so important that we talk to people and help each other out.
So speaking of the Dying Oath songs that I personally really resonated with me, End of Days. Can you tell me a little bit about that one?
So that was one of those one-off things where so Josh had written the song, and we had it for a good amount of time before we'd even started writing lyrics and stuff to it. It was just something that, they liked to play and that we thought was really cool. And one day I was thinking about writing to that song, and I ended up not writing the song, and I had a nap on the couch. I'll never forget about it, but I was having this nap on the couch, and it was like this crazy dream where it was like the end of the world, and like I was standing in my kitchen and I looked out through the window, and fire was just coming through all the trees between the mountains and coming toward me, and it scared the crap out of me. It literally did. Like I woke up in a sweat because it felt so real. And as I was listening to the song, some of the words started coming to me from this dream, and I thought, well, it's got to be some kind of sign or something. I don't know. So just kind of like a placeholder. I didn't even know it was going to actually become the song or that those lyrics were going to stick, but I just started writing some placeholders and went to practice and showed it to the guys, and they're like, actually, this is kind of cool. And we couldn't really figure out what the chorus was right off the bat, so it was a evolution over time. I think a couple of weeks later we came up with the chorus, but it ended up sticking and people really enjoyed it. And so we thought, well, if we're going to release the single, then we should do like this kind of post-apocalyptic video to go along with it. And so we did that, and it was freezing cold outside. Just like all the videos that we've ever done, it's always cold outside. I don't know why we do that to ourselves, but the rest is history.
I think the cold videos make the best aesthetic, unfortunately.
I agree. It kind of went with it, to be honest, because we were rocking out around this big fire pit, but everything else was just like freezing cold. Like the ground was crunchy. It was so cold outside, and I had to do some of those scenes without my jacket on. And at one point I was in the car crying because my hands were like frostbitten, and I was in so much pain, like trying to get them warm again. But now it's just a funny story to tell.
Absolutely. So taking it to a little bit of a higher note, so you just released, what was it, a month ago, Desire?
Yes.
It's up to what, I think 3K on YouTube already.
Yeah, it's like 3K on YouTube and like 3K on Facebook. So about 6,000 views so far, and I think it's up to like 14,000 on Spotify, something like that, which is not even what I thought it was going to do. But I mean, I'm really thankful for it. I'm thankful that people liked it. I was kind of iffy about releasing it because most people just know me as the screamer from Dying Oath. So when I released something so vulnerable like that, I thought, people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. And thankfully, like, most people really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I was watching it earlier. I've watched it several times, and I did not expect that from you at all. From hearing, like, you're the scream queen, like you said, for Dying Oath, and I was like, wait a minute, that's what she's got there? I was like, what the hell? Where did that come from? But I remember you posting about how vulnerable you felt, not just for the song, but for the video itself.
Yeah.
It's definitely a more, intimate side of you that you're portraying. What was it like to get to give that to yourself?
It was kind of scary, but at the same time, it was kind of liberating too, because like you said, I wanted it to be the most opposite side of what people see with Dying Oath. My solo stuff is going to be a lot more vulnerable, and it's not that it's going to be all cleans or anything like that. It's just going to be a different side of me. I feel like, I've got so much stuff to give, but with Dying Oath, like, that's kind of like, that's my rage, that's my outlet. That's how I get all of the toxicity out of my body. And I think with my solo stuff, it's just kind of like my loving side. It's like me just trying to share things with people that make them happy. It's not so much an outlet as it is just something fun that I feel that people are going to enjoy. So I was a little scared, a little anxious, but what you see with that is that's me. not that Dying Oath isn't me, but we're this big collective, we're a unit, and it's all of us in one,
Mhm.
and with my solo stuff, that's just me singularly. So I wanted people to be able to see that I can do those things. And also it was kind of like the beginning of showing people my cleans, so that whenever we put out music with Dying Oath, and you'll get to see some of those cleans, since I'm having to take over both sides, that, maybe people will accept it and like it a little bit more because they'll understand it.
Yeah. Um, so what I was going to ask about the video is that song definitely seems to have held a very high spot in your heart. It leaped right off of the screen for me. You can tell in your almost every motion in that video what that song means to you and what you were trying to convey to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Thank you for that.
yeah. To resonate with a song in that way and be able to portray it, I think, is a gift, in all honesty, because a lot of people can resonate with a song, but they can't exactly portray it, especially a cover song, because this is Meg Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I wanted to give you your just due on that, because I watched it and I was just like, this, you had me hook, line, and sinker the entire time, not just because I'm a Dying Oath fan, but you ooze the aesthetic of the video, and that really drew me
Thank
in.
you.
Yeah. Um,
I appreciate that. For that song, I think it was just one of those things that we all want to feel confident, and that song for me was something that made me feel beautiful. It made me feel confident and made me feel worthy. And I've always felt that way about that song. I used to do burlesque, and it was one of those songs that I always wanted to do, and I never ended up getting to do it. After COVID and all that, I didn't get to do burlesque a lot after that, and the band started taking off, and I just didn't have a lot of time for it. And it was one of those songs that I always wanted to dance to show people, how that song made me feel. And then I had this bright idea one day. I was like, well, why don't I cover that song and try and show people that translation instead? And I'm glad that I did, because I feel like that song makes other people feel the way that it did me. And maybe they hadn't heard it from Meg Myers, because she's not the most famous person in the world either. She's kind of an
mhm.
indie artist. So a lot of people hadn't really heard that song. And it wasn't that I was trying to like take that song and be like, okay, it's mine now. It was more like paying tribute to somebody that made me feel good about myself and wanting other people to have that same feeling. So it was more of like a tribute than anything.
And I think that, the word tribute is a very good word for it, because I feel like you definitely made it your own as well. I listened
Thank
to the
you.
original, and then I listened to yours, and you could hear the tonal inflections that you did a little bit differently, and I was like, she really went out and did everything to her own style. Um,
I appreciate that. And a little known fact, actually, Josh, the lead guitarist in my band, is actually the guy that did the solo work in that song, which I think made the whole song. Maybe
it
that's
did.
just me, but I thought it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It gave me chills the first time I heard it. So
Me
props.
too. Me too. He sent it over to me, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I'm going to need way more of that in my life, because it made me feel a lot of the things. So it's like, people are going to dig
Yeah.
this.
So, what is next for your solo career? What do you have planned?
So I'm actually working on some stuff right now. I have a handful of songs that are written, that I've done some scratch tracks for. I'm trying to tighten everything up and get everything exactly how I want it before I actually record it. And then, of course, I'll call my best friend over here to come over here and help, because his recordings are so much better than mine. So once I get everything tightened up, I'll call Josh. He'll come over and we'll get them recorded, and then I'll send them off to Exodian, which is the same people that has done all of our past tracks. They've done a couple of my other covers and stuff that I've done, and I think they do great with my sound, for
Mhm.
instance. So that's probably what will happen. I'd say in the next 4 or 5 months, I'll have a release or two ready to go. I don't know if I'll be releasing any more videos soon. Maybe I will. I'll have to see how that all pans out with us doing releases for the band and stuff. It's really a time thing, but I will be releasing a handful of new songs. It's still going to be rock, but it's going to be soft, and yeah, it's going to be everything that this one was. It's just going to be original.
That's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. If it's anything like Desire, I think it will score off the charts for me.
Thank you. That was just something I wanted to kind of push the door open with, something I thought people would enjoy so that they'll maybe come back and listen when I release my own stuff.
Yeah, and I need to get off the topic of Desire, but I can't brag enough about it because the cinematography and the filmography of that entire video is just, top notch.
Jaden Frost is brilliant. I will say that. He's the best I've ever worked with, and in the future, he'll probably do all of my releases. He's brilliant.
I remember when you were showing, I think you were doing teaser, like stills from the video, and I was like, what the hell is this going to look like? Like, if it looks that good in still images, I can't wait to see the video, and then it just blew my mind.
It blew my mind too, not gonna lie. Like, in shooting it, I was like, oh, I feel awkward. This is gonna look weird. I don't know how this is going to be. And then he sent me the video and I was like, oh my God, that's me. Wow.
You just answered my question I was getting ready to ask you. I was going to say, like, what was the first time watching it and hearing it in its entirety like?
I watched it twice back to back because the first time I was just in awe of everything. Like you said, the cinematography, the angles, all of that. Like, he had a vision and you can't see it when you're on the other side of the camera at all. It just seems weird because everything is shot like out of order. So you literally have no idea what it's going to look like. It's just a bunch of jumbled up stuff. And then he'll go in and take like the 1,000 scenes that you took and make like 100 out of them. So I didn't know what he was going to be using or what it was going to look like. We were kind of iffy that it was going to be too sexy and people weren't going to want to watch it because it was too iffy. And so we kind of reined it back a little bit. So it left a lot to the imagination and not just like sex the whole time. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. So I watched it the first time and was just in all of it. And then I watched it the second time to make sure that like everything was precise as far as like how it was supposed to look. And I just gave him like this tiny little storyboard on a piece of paper and he was like, okay, got it. And he just nailed it and then some. I mean, he really he made it a lot better than what I thought it was going to be because we had set locations and a lot of things that we were going to do differently. But like the day before, our locations fell through and we had nowhere to shoot. Oh, but wow. We were both on a time frame. So we were like, what are we going to do? And then he was like, I mean, we can rent somewhere. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to rent a hotel for the night. And he was like, we'll just shoot there. And I'm like, are you kidding? That's not going to look good. Like, that's going to be crap because it's only one location. That's not going to look good. He's like, no, I got it. We can do some lighting stuff. We can do some different angles. It's going to be fine. Like, bring some of your friends. I got this. And I'll be damned if he didn't just knock it out of the park. I mean, for one location and very little money, I think it was a good production.
The fact that you said very little money just blew my mind because it does not look like a very little money production.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of money to spend. Like, the most part of the money went to paying Jaden, which I would have paid triple what he asked because he's worth millions to me. Anyways, he's such a wonderful human being, but working with him is just a dream. He's a legend in my book. I've always wanted to work with him. So being able to do it with my solo work and my first song was just a dream come true as it was. But then to see how great of a production he did with what little bit of money that, we had was just insane to me. Unforgettable.
Do you think that Dying Oath will be getting him in on some videos?
Yeah, so he's actually shot more metal and rock videos than he has anything. This was the first time that he did anything that was of the sort, so it was new for both of us. He actually specializes in metal videos. He shot a lot of stuff for Cultus Black and a bunch of other big bands. So yeah, I definitely think that if we find an idea that we think that he would like to shoot and he can really like put his touch on, definitely, I think that we will definitely be working with him for the solo stuff and for Dying Oath for sure.
Absolutely. I think it will be a great mashup of you two, or collaboration, I should say. I think you guys will fit perfectly together. I know we're coming up on just about an hour. I'm just going to keep you for a few more minutes. I promise. I'm having such a blast with you. Thank you again for doing this. This is, I mean, it means the world to me, truly.
No, thank you for asking and for having me on. I'm super happy to do it. I'm having a good time.
Absolutely. And it extends to all the band as well. Like anytime you guys want to come on, like
yeah, you guys will have to jump on. We'll do a full band one the next time.
Absolutely. I would love that. I would love that.
Josh said you don't want that because he'll ramble on for like 20 minutes on the same question. He said he'll need 2 hours.
I mean, if you guys want to do it, I will reserve it.
Perfect. You let us know a time and we'll do it. We're usually, especially on Sundays, that's when we practice. So
Absolutely. So we've already talked about what you guys are doing. What is next for the scene as far as Dying Oath? What are you guys doing in the local scene?
So right now we only booked a handful of shows. We tried to be really picky about our shows this year because we're really trying to take time to write new music, to get the music that we already have done recorded. We're going to try to release an EP, which seems like it's going to keep growing because we keep coming up with songs that we really dig. So we might get a whole album. I don't know at this point. We definitely want to have some content ready when we do the release, as far as like, we at least want to get a video or two done and having content that we can post with it. So that, it does well. I don't think a lot of people understand what the process is because it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. Everything's got to go through an editing system and then it comes back to us and then we perfect it and then goes back through the editing and it's just a process. And then videos take weeks to months, depending on how much stuff you have to edit. It's a lot, but that's why we didn't want to take a lot of shows this year so that we can kind of be behind the scenes and building a foundation for the following year because there's so much stuff that we want to do. So I think this year we've got four more shows left. So If you guys want to see us, those are your 4 chances. I don't think we're going to take on any more unless it's like another national show or a festival. We're probably not going to take on any more shows this year. And we'll just be on the back end writing new music with Joey here. He's got material too. And we're kind of all moving in the same direction. And so we've got more material that we can work with. And it's just becoming this mound of beautiful music that we're just trying to figure out what we want to do with it and really perfect it before we give it to you guys, because you've waited so long for the music that we want it to be right. So, yeah. And I'm learning to write as a solo vocalist, which is really cool. I'm having a great time with that. It's a lot heavier, but it's a lot more me and I'm enjoying it. So it's going to be great. I think you guys will enjoy it if you like heavy music.
Do you find it more freeing to be not necessarily freeing. Do you find it more cathartic to be a single vocalist?
Well, I think that in the past, I didn't have any issues writing with our past vocalists because a lot of them were on the same wavelength, especially our first vocalist, Jeb. He was just such a great writer in general. And I loved working with some of these past vocalists and being able to write something that we both cared about and being on the same page. It's cool when you can come together and make something. Mm-hmm. But I think writing for myself, there's not a lot of things that I really have to worry about as far as leaving things out or writing the core details, because it's all going to be my experiences. And I don't have to worry about a time frame of working with somebody. If I get up at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night and pin down some lyrics, I don't have to call my partner and be like, hey, do you like this? Would you want to change this? It's just mostly taking it to the band and being like, here, this is what I wrote. If you like it, let's run with it. So we're putting out music a lot quicker because I don't have as many steps to have to go through. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more personal. for me. It's hard when I wrote stuff like Ascension for somebody to identify with that because it was something that I wrote for me. And so now I don't have to worry about, all the extra steps.
Is it more difficult to do live as far as the transitioning from the screams to the cleans, or is it just kind of second nature now?
Well, I mean, it's second nature, but just being under those lights and screaming, as hard as it is, all the breath control, the heat, there's a lot of factors that go into it. You kind of have to be in shape because it's like running a mile. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it already. But all of the songs that we wrote in the beginning were written for 2 vocalists. And there's only so many things that I can take out without it being screwed up, especially for the 3 songs that we released. We want to keep that as true as possible. So I'm having to keep a lot of those overlapping parts and just figuring out if I want to do cleans in that section or the screams, but still keeping those same parts. So some of these songs, I don't even have a second to breathe. It's like straight in and out, straight in and out, straight in and out, straight in and out for the entire song. But we are working on some other cool things in the band because Joey actually is a fantastic screamer. So I'm thinking in some of the parts, maybe I could do the cleans while he does some screams. Maybe we can do some dual screams, like some harmony screams. I don't really know what we're going to cook up, but it's going to be cool. I can feel it. It's going to be awesome. But for now, for these shows, yeah, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. It's hard to get through. But I think the more I do it, the easier it's going to become because I had shows where my vocalist couldn't show up anyway, and I just kind of had to do it on a whim. But now I'm actually practicing for it. So it's a lot easier than it was. And then some of the songs I completely scrapped because they weren't recorded and rewrote them completely. We have 2 songs that had been songs since the beginning of the band that I just scrapped all the vocals, rewrote them completely to where they're completely different songs, but they're songs that are about me that I identify with and are much heavier than what they were before. So
it's I'm glad you said that it's like running a marathon basically, because I do, obviously the people that do know me, like I do vocals as well, but over the last year I joined a band, and it's like at the 45 minute of practice, like I'm gassed.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of our practices, like, especially if we run through the set 2 or 3 times, or if you've got a big show, like we just had this past week where you've got all those huge lights and stuff, when I get done, I literally feel like I've been running a mile. Like I'm sweaty. My stomach hurts. Like I'm just like, geez, I'm kind of glad it's over. Like I love it while it's happening, but as soon as we're done, I'm like, thank God I can go drink a beer now because that was
So I'll only keep you for a few more minutes, but if you could tell anybody that was in the situation that caused you to write Ascension, if you could tell them anything, what would you say to them?
If there's anything I learned from those situations, it's that you can always overcome anything. It's just finding the right tools to get yourself out of the box, so to speak. So the best thing that you can do and the hardest thing that you can do is to talk to somebody else about it. There are still good people in the world, and there are people that would want to help you. I'm one of those people. If you guys are in a situation that you need to get out of and you need help, message me. I will help you with tools on how to do that. There are hotlines that you can talk to. There are people that are trained to get you out of situations in a safe environment. You just got to really want it. A lot of people feel like that it's something that they deserve, or, they go through mental issues and they feel like they don't want to get out of the situation, or that they'd be better off dead, or whatever the situation may be. And that's just not the case. Life can be beautiful, but you have to make it that way for yourself. And even the things that feel like they're out of our control are actually in our control. Just sometimes we need help from other people to be able to facilitate that. So the best thing that you can do is just reach out to somebody that cares about you, and I promise you, they will help you get out of that situation. Do not be embarrassed about it because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like, it's not anybody's fault that's in that situation other than the person that's causing you to be in that situation. So reach out to somebody and get help in any situation that you're in. If you're suicidal, if you are living with addiction, I've had to live through both of those things as well, and I got help. The only reason why I'm still here today and I'm still succeeding and I'm living my dreams and I'm being able to do all these things is because I got help. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and asking somebody for help. You can do it.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. Mindy, thank you again for doing this. I've had such a wonderful time getting to know you, and
Likewise.
I would love to get you back on here like we were talking about, like the whole band. I think that would be really killer and chaotic and just beyond fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But it seems like you all have so much that you are going to accomplish this year, and I personally can't wait to see what you all achieve, and
Thank
I'm
you.
rooting for you.
I appreciate that. We're rooting for you too, man. That's why I wanted to be on this podcast. I think you're doing great things in the scene, and I'm hoping this takes off for you, for real.
You know, I get that from the guests that I talked to, and it's like, honestly, it would be really cool to become like a top podcast or something like that. But I just want to help people at this point. I've been through my fair share of things, and it's like I know what it's like to not reach out. I know what it's like to deal with those things, and then when you hear people open up about them that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise, it does something, you know. And
For sure. It's like helping people that are helping people.
yes. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, what better legacy, you know? But Mindy, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it so much. This has been just, I don't know what I was expecting, but it was beyond what I expected. So,
hey, same here. I appreciate it. You did a great job. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Make me
You're
emotional now, Jesus. But I will let you go, and I hope you all have a wonderful time tonight. If you are going to catch any more of the Super Bowl, I am hoping I'll be able to keep up with some of the scores. I don't really. My team's not in it. I'm an Eagles fan, so I could really care less.
I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm just over here like whatever happens, happens. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mindy, much love. Thank you again. You
much
have a
love,
wonderful
man.
night.
Thank you.
So everybody, that was Mindy Jackson of Dying Oath. She was so gracious enough to come on here and give me some of her time and energy and just, you know, give good story, good conversation. So like I said, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for going beyond the breakdown with 6 Scars. This has been episode 5. This is part 1 of a double header tonight because I am just absolutely insane. So I have another interview in about an hour with the amazing Matt Sassano out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And if you don't know who he is, I will catch you guys up. You all have a wonderful time. I'll see you soon.